Hey, that's great, that's great. Okay. I guess most of you are here for the whole week, yeah? Yeah, okay. So hopefully during the course of the week you're going to be building your community and you'll have your own culture, and I don't know whether you're going to sit in around the same tables, whether they've been allocated or not, or whether you're going to sort of swap around during the course of the week. But basically, you'll develop, you'll create your own culture, partly from a history. You had a good summer school last year, so that might come into the building, into the community. New people will come, some people will go. And round your tables, if you were separate organizations, I guess you would build a subculture there. Yeah? You build your own subculture, and you may reach out to other tables. There may be some design, some structure, some processes which will get you communicating across, but your home base will be around your tables. And over the course of the week, I guess you develop your way of being, your status quo, and then maybe what would happen at some point if something changed, something came in from, dare I say, Westminster or Cardiff or the course, the summer school organisers or someone up here and asked you to move around, yeah? Or shudder to think, told you to move around, yeah? They may engage you and enlist you in a process where you've actually got to reach out and get up and move around and change your roles and change the people you're with and develop new relationships, new policies and procedures. And for a period of time, like if I ask you to do that now, there would be a period of confusion, yeah? You wouldn't quite know where you're going, and maybe you wouldn't know what it would look like when you got there, yeah? But eventually, hopefully, you would get into your new table, new organization, establish new relationships, and get better at what it is that you're meant to be doing. And a new status quo, if you like, a new status quo would be established. This model, which is from Virginia Satir, is looking at change in that way. She was dealt a lot with emotions and people going through change in America. And it's such an important model because that chaotic period is a normal and natural place when going through change. I'd like to just spend 1 or 2 minutes looking at that in some detail. You will get the handout at the end of the presentation. Okay, the way we were. Sorry for the various metaphors here, but the jigsaw, you know, if you keep on doing what you're doing, you keep on getting what you get, yeah? And in any organization, in any community, you reach a balance of things, a balance of operation. It's not necessarily the optimal balance. For example, in an organization, there may be some real problems in customer service, yeah, and no one's really addressing them. But somehow the customer complaints department is really good. They've got a really good manager, and so they really focus on really responding very quickly to customer complaints. So there's a status quo there, but it's not an optimal status quo. There's for example, on an individual level, there's someone who smokes and drinks and is relatively unhealthy, but recognizes that and so does exercise 2 or 3 times a week, yeah, to balance that out. So there's a sense of, there's a way of being, not necessarily optimal, but it works. And then something comes along, yeah. It may be an edict from on high, it may be Jeremy Beecham, it may be aeroplanes going into Twin Tower, yeah? But what happens is the way you see things changes, yeah? When change is imposed upon you from a new chief exec coming into an organization or whatever, the old goes, and sometimes it feels like the rug's been pulled from underneath you. I don't know if you've had that experience when the old scheme of things just starts to evaporate. And things begin to disintegrate. So, for example, the person who's smoking and drinking and doing his exercise, suddenly he gets some palpitations, yeah? And he sees the doctor, and the doctor says, just a couple of sentences. He says, I think I'm going to refer you to the hospital, yeah? And the person's world changes forever, yeah? And when things in an organization or a community or a nation have to change because this new thing comes into this pressure for change, everything moves apart, yeah, okay? And one loses one's sense of identity. You can lose your relationships, you can lose your working practices, and each person will experience this in a different way, okay? Some people embrace change, yeah? Have we got any people who embrace change here wholeheartedly? Yeah? Occasionally? Yeah? Mm-hmm. When there's a compelling reason or a real need or a wonderful vision out there, or someone's enlisted you in creating a new future, there's all sorts of things which will help people move through change, and we'll be coming on to some of those later. Just right now, I want to sort of just focus on this chaos which we can go through when the rug's been pulled from underneath our feet. Okay. So what happens to you? And I'm going to be asking you around your tables in twos and threes in just a couple of minutes. What happens to you during this chaos? Yeah, when you're feeling anxious, uncertain about the future, you've lost your relationships, you've lost all sorts of things which gave you a bit of surety, and you're not too clear where you're going. That period may be just with salespeople and politicians. I find that period is very, very short. They can sort of bounce back very quickly. But for most of us, it takes a long time, this period of trying to reestablish a new order. And often, what we find is people try to reject these new things, new ideas. So, no matter as managers of change, no matter how often you might say, this is why we're changing, that people sort of seem to think they don't actually hear you. They don't read the memos. They don't actually take it in. They seem to carry on as normal, or what was normal for them. We can try to accommodate within the existing framework. So for example, we found this like with diversity and equality, yeah? When the agendas came in over the last 15 years or so, what did we do? We had a process. We'd have a process within our organizations, and we'd add on a little bit at the end which said, oh yes, we must deal with equality and diversity. Or if it's corporate social responsibility, we've got our processes. We'll add a little bit on at the end which says, oh, and we'll look at that as well. Or with climate change, everyone now is saying, oh, we'll do our little bit as well. And it's just adding it on within the current paradigm, within the current framework. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we can't try and change the old model to receive these new ideas. So Beecham might come along and say, we've really got to cooperate across organizations. So what do? We might appoint partnership officers to talk about. We'll keep the structures the same, we'll keep the policies the same, but we'll just add in things around the organization. We won't necessarily address some of the underlying ways which we can actually transform our community. And this is quite a struggle to be in this stage, because wouldn't it be nice if we could just get through it, if we can plan our way through it, where we had some certainty about the future. And eventually, you'll be pleased to know, in this model, eventually it begins to make sense. This I think when the scales drop from your eyes, when you get that aha moment, when the whole new way of doing things clicks in place. I don't know if you've ever been to a chiropractor, when they finally click your back into place. And it's that insightful moment when you've been rejecting that job description of this new job which you have to apply for, and you've been rejecting it all the time. And then one day, one morning over breakfast, you actually start, oh, just maybe I could try for this, yeah. So there's a process where suddenly things start to come together and you can actually see either the bigger picture, or you can translate it into, this is how this table and that table are really going to work together. Now, I get it, yeah? But you don't get it until you've been through that chaos, yeah? So, as a brief interlude from my talking, I'd like you to just talk, maybe in twos and threes and fours around each of the tables. Just for a moment, what helps, what hinders this process of change? Put another way, it's how do you get through the chaos? If you recognize it, I would hope you do recognize that period of uncertainty, of doubt, of shock, of denial, of anger, of irritation, frustration. What actually gets you through that? What management, what leadership helps? What management leadership hinders?